Ladies, pull up a chair. Put your purse on the floor. Cross your legs. Adjust your crown, because we're about to have a real conversation today. A conversation too many of y'all avoid because you're trying to be polite, sweet, well-mannered, gentle, accommodating everything your grandma taught you to be. And listen, that's cute. That's precious. That's adorable. When you stop rewarding inconsistent behavior, you stop training a man to believe he can give you half effort and still get full access to you. Inconsistency is not confusion. It is a decision. It is a pattern. It is a man telling you who he is without ever saying the words out loud. When someone shows up only when it benefits them, disappears when you need them, and reappears the moment they feel you pulling away, that is not affection. That is convenience wrapped in charm. And every time you respond with warmth, availability, or understanding, you reinforce the exact thing that's hurting you. A lot of women confuse patience with endurance. You're not being patient. You're holding your breath, waiting for him to turn into the version of himself he only shows when he wants something. Those little sparks he throws at you when he wants attention, those random good morning texts, those 2-hour bursts of effort, those small crumbs of affection, those are not a foundation. Those are bait, and you deserve more than being someone's temporary motivation. You know how inconsistency becomes powerful, not because the man is irresistible, not because he's special, but because you keep responding, you keep giving, you keep hoping, you keep believing that the potential you see in him is stronger than the reality he shows you. And the heartbreaking part is that your hope becomes the very fuel for his laziness. Why should he step up when he already has access to you without doing the work? Why should he be consistent when inconsistency still gets rewarded? It hurts. It really does. Because you're not doing it to look foolish. You're doing it because you care. Because you want to believe in someone. Because you've told yourself that if you just hold on a little longer, he'll finally. Notice how loyal you are, how patient you've been, how deeply you're invested. But loyalty to the wrong behavior doesn't build love. It builds cycles. You end up in situations where you're the only one carrying the emotional weight while he picks it up, puts it down whenever he feels like it. 1 minute he's all in, and the next he's a ghost with a pulse. You find yourself analyzing moments that meant everything to you but meant almost nothing to him. And it breaks you quietly, not all at once, but piece by piece. And the truth is, inconsistent behavior is not an accident. It's not a mistake. It's not him being busy. It's a strategy. It keeps you hopeful enough to stay, but uncertain enough to chase. It keeps you attached, but never secure. It keeps your heart occupied, but never protected. It keeps you emotionally invested with no return on that investment. You deserve someone whose actions don't depend on their mood. Someone who doesn't love you only when it's convenient. Someone who doesn't show up only when he feels you slipping away. Consistency is love in motion. Inconsistency is self-interest in disguise. And every time you stop rewarding it, you reclaim a part of yourself you didn't even realize you were giving away. Boundaries are not walls. They are doors with locks, and you get to choose who holds the key. People hear the word boundary and immediately think it means shutting someone out, being cold, being difficult, being dramatic. But the truth is, boundaries are the only way you teach others how to treat you. Without them, people walk into your life with their shoes on, leave there, mess everywhere, and somehow expect you to thank them for visiting. The quality of your relationships rises or falls based on the quality of your boundaries. When you don't set them, you end up attracting people who love the version of you that requires nothing from them. The version of you who whispers instead of speaks. The version who feels guilty for having needs. The version who apologizes for wanting respect. And the heartbreaking part is that you start to believe that lowering your standards is the only way to keep someone. But every time you lower a boundary to make someone else comfortable, you raise the price you pay in silence. The resentment grows quietly. The exhaustion creeps in slowly. You start to feel small in spaces you once felt safe. And at night, when you're honest with yourself, you know you're giving more than you should and receiving less than you deserve. A boundary is simply saying, this is what I need to feel respected. But that sentence scares people who benefit from your lack of them. They get defensive. They call you too much. They act confused. They minimize your feelings. But understand this. The right person will not be threatened by your boundaries. They will be grateful for the clarity. Because boundaries don't push healthy people away, they push unhealthy behaviors out. It takes courage to put yourself first. When you've been conditioned to put yourself last, you might shake, you might second guess yourself, you might worry about being abandoned, and that fear is real, that fear is heavy. But the pain of staying where you are is heavier, because without boundaries, you lose pieces of yourself, trying to hold together relationships that are already falling apart. Some people only understand distance, not conversation. They only understand consequences, not explanation. You can talk for hours, cry for days, explain in every way imaginable, and they still won't change, not because they can't, but because they don't have to. That's where boundaries come in. Boundaries introduce accountability where words have failed. And there's something powerful that happens the moment you set a boundary. Your soul exhales. Something inside you stands up a little straighter. You stop begging for the bare minimum. You stop accepting inconsistent effort. You stop giving discounts on your heart. You stop letting people love you halfway. When you honor your boundaries, you teach others that love must come with respect, that access to you is earned, that your energy is valuable, that your peace is non-negotiable. Boundaries don't just protect your relationships, they transform them. They reveal who is capable of loving you in a way that doesn't require you to disappear. Your standards are not negotiable. They are not optional, not suggestions, not preferences if he feels like it. They are the lines that protect your heart, your peace, and your future. But somewhere along the way, a lot of women learn to treat their standards like a bargaining table. You start with a clear idea of what you want. But the moment you catch feelings, the negotiations begin. Suddenly the things that mattered become maybe. The things that were non-negotiable become we'll see. And the things that should have been deal breakers become I'll give it time. You don't lower your standards because you're weak. You lower them because you care, because you want something to work, because you're afraid of losing someone who already shows signs they're not willing to meet you where you stand. You tell yourself you're being understanding, being flexible, being patient, but deep down you know you're slowly stepping out of alignment with the woman you promised yourself you'd be. Standards are not there to scare good men away. They're there to reveal which men are actually ready. The right man doesn't get intimidated by what you require. He gets motivated. He listens. He adjusts. He shows up differently because he sees value in you. But the wrong man sees your standards as pressure, as inconvenience, as work he doesn't want to do. And instead of admitting that he's not ready, he'll call you demanding, extra, too much, or hard to please. He'll try to make you feel guilty for expecting what he never planned to give. And that guilt is what traps so many people. You don't want to feel high maintenance. You don't want to feel difficult. You don't want to be labeled as someone who asks for too much. So you shrink. You minimize your needs. You convince yourself that wanting consistency, respect, communication, commitment, and honesty is somehow unreasonable. But your standards are not unreasonable. His effort is just inconsistent. The moment you start negotiating your standards, you teach someone that your boundaries are flexible, that your needs can be postponed, that your heart is available regardless of how they treat you. And once you give someone permission to treat you beneath your own expectation, it becomes harder and harder to climb back up to the level you deserve. You end up chasing the bare minimum because you've trained yourself to settle for it. What hurts most is that part of you knows better. You know what you want. You know what you need. And on your strongest days, you know exactly what you deserve. But feelings get loud. Hope gets heavy. And loneliness whispers in the dark that maybe wanting real love is asking for too much. But it's not. You're not difficult. You're not delusional. You're not wrong for wanting effort that matches your own. When you hold on to your standards, you're not being picky. You're being protective. You're protecting the future version of you who refuses to cry over the same patterns. You're protecting your emotional energy. You're protecting your peace. You're protecting your heart from being handled by someone who's not qualified to hold it. And the moment you decide that your standards are final, you stop attracting people who only want access and start attracting people who want responsibility. Emotional availability is not a luxury. It's not a bonus feature. It's not some extra add-on a man gives you once he's comfortable. It is the foundation of connection. Without it, everything feels one-sided, confusing, and painfully uncertain. You can love someone deeply. You can feel chemistry. You can laugh together. You can share memories. But if he's not emotionally available, you will always feel like you're reaching for someone who keeps stepping just out of reach. And it hurts because emotional unavailability rarely shows up loudly. It slips in quietly. It pretends to be busy, focused, not ready, healing, or taking things slow. At first, you think he's thoughtful. You think he's cautious. You think he's trying to do things the right way. But gradually, you start to notice you're the one doing all the emotional heavy lifting. You're the one checking in. You're the one initiating the important conversations. You're the one asking how he feels, what he wants, where this is going. Meanwhile, he's floating through the relationship like feelings are optional. Like vulnerability is something he'll get around to eventually. Like opening up is a risk he'd rather avoid. You end up providing emotional comfort without receiving emotional presence. And that imbalance slowly drains you. It creates a loneliness that's hard to explain to anybody else. How do you describe missing someone who sleeps beside you? How do you explain feeling invisible to someone who says he cares? How do you confess that you feel like a guest in a relationship you helped build? You start wondering if you're asking for too much. You start questioning your tone, your timing, your needs. You rehearse your sentences before you say them, trying not to sound needy. You stop bringing up things that bother you, because every conversation feels like you're walking across thin ice. You start shrinking your emotions to keep the peace with someone who refuses to share theirs. Emotional unavailability trains you to believe your feelings are burdens. It makes you think you have to earn intimacy. It convinces you that patience is the same as progress. But you cannot build a partnership with someone who keeps you outside of their inner world. You cannot grow with someone who refuses to open the door. And it's not your job to force openness. It's not your responsibility to drag vulnerability out of someone who's determined to stay guarded. You can create a safe space. You can communicate gently. You can show patience. But if he's unwilling to meet you halfway, you will always feel like you're begging for scraps of emotional engagement. The right person won't make you beg. They won't make you guess. They won't treat their feelings like a state secret. They won't disappear when conversations get uncomfortable. They won't shut down every time you ask for clarity. Emotional availability comes naturally to someone who wants to build with you. You deserve someone who chooses emotional honesty over protection, connection over avoidance, clarity over comfort, and vulnerability over distance. You deserve a partner who doesn't make you decode their intentions or translate their silence. You deserve someone who shows up not just in presence, but in heart. Self-respect is the foundation of love, because every relationship you build rests on how you treat yourself first. If you love yourself, you don't tolerate confusion. If you value yourself, you don't accept laziness disguised as effort. If you honor yourself, you don't allow inconsistency to feel normal. But when your self-respect slips, even just a little, your heart becomes vulnerable in a way that makes you accept things you would have never allowed before. Self-respect isn't loud. It isn't dramatic. It doesn't announce itself. It shows up in quiet decisions, the kind you make alone late at night when no one is watching. It's in the message you don't answer, the apology you stop accepting, the effort you stop chasing, the door you finally close after giving too many chances. It's the moment you look in the mirror and say, I deserve more than this, even when it breaks your heart to admit it. And the hardest part is that sometimes you confuse self-respect with being too picky or too guarded. You worry people will think you're difficult. You worry you'll end up alone. So you loosen the grip on your standards, thinking it'll make someone stay. You silence your needs, hoping it'll make things easier. You pretend certain things don't hurt you because speaking up feels riskier than staying quiet. But every time you betray yourself to keep someone else, you chip away at the relationship you have with your own soul. You might not notice it at first. You might think you're being flexible. You might convince yourself you're choosing love. But self-betrayal always leaves a bruise. It always catches up with you. It always shows on your face, in your energy, in the way you start doubting your own worth. When you respect yourself, you stop accepting apologies without changed behavior. You stop mistaking mixed signals for possibilities. You stop entertaining people who treat your heart like an option. You stop waiting for someone to realize what you bring to the table, and you start choosing people who already see it. Self-respect doesn't make you harsh. It makes you honest. It makes you clear. It makes you powerful. And the truth is, people feel your self-respect before you ever speak a word. They feel it in how you carry yourself. They feel it in the way you don't chase. They feel it in the way you don't beg. They feel it in the way you walk away when something doesn't align with your peace. Respect from others begins with the respect you show yourself when you hold your head high, When you refuse to settle, when you choose emotional safety over temporary excitement, you send a message that cannot be misunderstood. You teach the world how to treat you. You show others that your love has depth, but it also has boundaries. You show that access to you is valuable, not automatic. Self-respect is not about being perfect. It's about being aware. Aware of your worth, aware of your needs, aware of the fact that loving someone else should never require abandoning yourself. And when your self-respect is intact, love becomes clearer, healthier, easier, because you stop fighting for people who drain you, and you start choosing people who match you. You start attracting the kind of love that doesn't make you shrink. You start living in a way that honors the person you're becoming, not the person you settled for in the past. Stop overgiving to underperforming men, because every time you pour into someone who isn't pouring back, you are teaching them that your love requires no effort. You are teaching them that your time is limitless, your energy is disposable, and your heart will always be there no matter how little they show up. And that is how you slowly drain yourself emotionally while they continue taking without ever thinking they need to give. Overgiving doesn't start with desperation. It starts with hope. You hope he'll appreciate you. You hope he'll change. You hope he'll wake up one day and match the effort you've been giving from the start. You think if you love him harder, support him stronger, show up more consistently, he'll look at you and finally decide you're worth committing to. But love doesn't work like that. You can't love someone into maturity. You can't uplift someone into accountability. Some men get used to overgivers because it makes their life easy. They don't have to plan anything because you'll take care of the details. They don't have to initiate conversations because you'll fill every silence. They don't have to give reassurance because you'll convince yourself everything's fine. They don't have to commit because you're already acting like a partner. They sit comfortably in a role they never earned because you're doing the emotional, mental, and sometimes even physical labor of two people. You start justifying his lack of effort. You defend him to your friends. You make excuses. He's tired. He's stressed. He's not used to giving. He's been hurt before. And while you're busy trying to understand his struggles, he isn't taking a moment to understand yours. You're carrying the connection, the communication, the healing, the plans, the future, and eventually it starts to feel like you're loving alone. And loving alone is exhausting. It makes you question yourself. You start thinking maybe you're asking for too much. Maybe you're too emotional. Maybe you should be more patient. Overgiving makes you doubt your own worth because you keep giving love that's not being reflected back. It creates a cycle where the more you give, the less they appreciate you. The more effort you put in, the less they try. The easier you make things for them, the less they feel the need to grow. What hurts the most is that you think you're giving is helping the relationship, when in reality, it's stopping it from ever becoming balanced. You're shielding them from the discomfort that would force them to step up. You're protecting them from consequences that would reveal their true character. You're filling all the gaps so they never have to, and the relationship becomes a place where your needs barely exist. You deserve a man who meets you with equal energy, someone who doesn't watch you do all the emotional work while he casually benefits from your effort. Someone who matches your vulnerability, your commitment, your consistency. Someone who doesn't let you carry the weight alone just because they know you're strong enough to do it. Giving is beautiful when it's mutual, when it flows both ways, when it feels like partnership instead of sacrifice. Love grows where effort is shared, not where one person is constantly emptying themselves, trying to keep the connection alive. When you stop overgiving, you create space for someone who actually wants to show up. Someone who doesn't see your love as convenience, but as a privilege. Someone who understands that effort is not optional, it's the minimum requirement for access to your heart.